Good morning, folks. Let's get underway. Welcome to the Down East Track By. Let's get to it and at it. Our next session, notre prochaine séance, is Empowering Indigenous Communities with WordPress. This is a panel. Raquel is our moderator for the panel. I will let her introduce herself and the panelists. Raquel.
Hello. Welcome, everybody. Like she said, I'm Raquel, and I actually I was born and raised in Reno, Nevada, in the States, and I am registered Walker River Paiute, which is, the tribe is like an hour outside of Reno. But then I've lived most of my life in Phoenix, Arizona, which Arizona has the largest population of Indigenous, but I am not a Southwestern Indigenous person. I am a Northwestern. And then my other tribe is Assiniboine Sioux out of Fort Peck, Montana, which is actually like 60 miles from the Canadian border. So that's my little connection to Canada. But very happy to be here, and we'll be moderating our panel today. But before, I do want to say that in Reno, that whole area, Nevada, California, all the way up through Idaho and even up through Washington, was originally occupied by Paiute. So we're actually Southern Paiute, which is Reno, that area, and then as you go up through Washington, you got Northern Paiute. And then where I reside now, in Phoenix, Arizona, the Tana Atam Nation is actually indigenous to the city. And just wanted to acknowledge that those are the original occupants of where I lived, the two places I've lived most of my life. So with that, I'm going to let these two introduce themselves, and then we will get started. Take it away.
Hello, bonjour pour ceux qui parlent français. Good morning for those who speak English. I'm from here, from the Ottawa Valley. It's just in Anne Pryor, kind of 45-minute drive from here. My name is Batuli Sise. I'm a Woo Growth Happiness Engineer from Automatic. I'm not Indigenous. Unlike Raquel, I don't have a connection or more history with, but we're here and we respect the land. So it's a topic that's very close to my heart, and I have experience with digital literacy, education, computer in general, more specifically open source and the WordPress community. So I'm happy to be here and to discuss this topic. I will let Stacy take over.
I'm Stacy Carlson. I am the Director of Affiliate Marketing at Automatic. I'm from Lincoln, Nebraska, which is smack dab in the middle of the U.S. My background has a lot to do with giving back to the WordPress community, since so much was given to me. Yeah.
Nice. Thank you. I did forget to say, professionally, I do work for Elegant Themes. I'm the community manager, and I've been contributing to the WordPress community for over a decade. So that is also why I'm here. So we're going to go ahead and get started. We're going to just basically talk about ways that we empower Indigenous communities or are helping to, and there will be time at the end for questions. So if you have any, feel free to ask. But for now, we're just going to go ahead and get started. So the first question, ladies, is for both of you. Can you share your journey into WordPress and how it has impacted your community?
So in 2005, I started an e-commerce company. It was for digital scrapbooking, which is very female-dominated. The designers that worked for me were primarily female. They had taught themselves how to do graphic design, and they were looking for a way for them to stay at home with their children while also making money for the family. So that was the prime focus of my company. We installed WordPress so that they could actually advertise what they were putting into the store. It ended up being one of our biggest moneymakers because it also fed over to MailChimp, which sent out a daily newsletter. From what we saw in regards to that company, watching people who lived in very remote areas or areas that throughout the world, they were able to do things that they would not have been able to do otherwise. I had one designer who actually lived here in Canada but was from England, and she told me that if it hadn't been for the income that this source gave her, she would have never have been able to go back and see her family. And she expected to be in Canada for the rest of her life without being able to travel back. We had one family whose wife worked for me. Her entire family, her husband worked in contracting, and during one of the recessions in the United States, he lost all of his business. And they were on the brink of bankruptcy except for what she made being able to work remotely. And this was, again, back in 2005, and nobody worked remotely at that point. So WordPress for me, once I installed that, they were allowed to advertise their products. That went out to our customer base. And from there, I fell in love with WordPress because I saw this opportunity that was, it erased boundaries. It allowed people in rural communities or communities that aren't highly commercialized to do something that they haven't been able to do in the past. You know, we saw communities where big companies left in Nebraska. One of them was Cabela's. So they built out an entire city. They brought all these people into, I think it was Ogallala, Nebraska. They built this whole up, and then they shut everything down. And when they shut down, all these people who had moved there specifically for their job now found themselves not being able to sell their home, not being able to find another job in their town, but instead, we, the group that I work with, went to Ogallala and started teaching people WordPress because they all actually had this understanding of e-commerce and giving them the ability to find these boundaries, to remove the boundaries that used to be there through WordPress was so impactful for them because it actually gave them hope at that point. Because at that, you know, when Cabela's shut down, their entire lives changed. So I've seen how WordPress changes everything. The most recent one is, so in Lincoln, Nebraska, we have our public school system, but they've created focus programs. So like my daughter went through the Arts and Humanities program. Well, one thing that was realized was that 30% of all of our students either didn't graduate, or if they did graduate, they had no path forward. They didn't know what they were going to do. So through the public school system, they created a program called Gap Year, which brought that 30% in, and they had 3 tracks. They were going to get them ready to go to college, help them find a job, or start a business. And one of the things that I've been helping with is actually teaching those students how to use WordPress. Because, again, if you can learn WordPress, if you can learn how to code in WordPress, there are more options out there. Even being able to start your own e-commerce company on WordPress. So watching these students who, for the most part, did not have a support system, now being lifted up in regards to the Gap Year program has been huge. My daughter actually went through the Gap Year program because she has a learning disability. And, you know, just seeing a child blossom in regards to not knowing what they're going to do and then having a path, it changes the entire trajectory of their lives.
Awesome.
Yeah, as for me, this started when I got interested. I was in college, was doing a degree in software engineering. So I wanted a way to freelance a little bit and get some bucks out of school. So I found out when I started developing from scratch, it would take me more time. So I went to Upwork. I created a freelance account, and I started taking projects. So I saw that many clients wanted to have a WordPress website. So I started building website with WordPress from scratch. And that's how the the journey started. And then moving forward, I joined more the community because I saw it's open source and I could bring something as a software engineer. So I just joined it and continued developing in it until the time back in 2015 when I started teaching. And basically, based on the open source nature of WordPress and how accessible and easy it is to develop with it, most of my students was more, like their interest was more aligned with WordPress, like content, CMS, and all that. So we just had to go with that. And I had to be engaged more with the community, find ways to teach faster because everybody wanted to learn faster and earn faster. So that's how it went. And here I am today. I think it's over a decade now, so.
Nice. Welcome. All of that makes me think about the challenges, right, that come from empowering, especially you talked about rural communities. And so that brings me to this next question is like, what are the challenges, right? Especially when we think about accessibility, and not even from an accessibility standpoint when it comes to web design, but even just bringing to the rural communities, bringing to reservations. So can, whoever wants to go first is fine, but what are some of the biggest challenges you face with introducing WordPress to communities, to students, to potentially reservations?
Right. So one of the challenges basically is the lack of technical skills. Most people, when it comes to developing website, they see it as a mystery happening behind it. So they may say, yeah, I want to have my own website. I just basically want to have a website that I can add to my CV. Or I want a website for my company. I want a website for learning management system, but I just think I can do it. Yeah, so how we overcome that, we will come to that, I think, later on. But beside that, we have also the accessibility. Basically, accessibility to reliable internet connection, accessibility to logistics, like computers, because in most houses, people don't really have computers, they just rely on mobile devices. So these are kind of the three main reasons that these are the three main challenges that we face when it comes to getting started with WordPress.
Yeah.
Yeah, and for much of those things, I think the number one thing that I see is this lack of confidence when it comes to technology. Like, I can't do that. And once somebody sits down with a student and shows them that it can be easy once it's set up, it's just, there's this look of complete happiness with the student when they realize, wait, this isn't actually as hard as I thought it would be. So it's just building up the confidence with those who've not used technology as much as other people have. So just sitting down and being super patient. I mean, that's the biggest thing, is helping them understand what it is and how to use it, and that it can open doors that they just didn't realize before.
I think some of it too are the challenges that, regardless of rural reservation, that we're all discovering is using open source and why, versus Wix, Squarespace, which is easy. And I find it more challenging. I was just sharing, my brother he's using all the social platforms to basically teach our native language, which is essentially technically a dead language. And he is now teaching phrases, words, and to bring it back to life, because it, literally has died with our grandparents. And I'm like, oh, cool, well, let's do a WordPress blog. But he's like, but I could just do this super fast. And so it's funny, because I feel like some of the challenges we face on our own, is just, and by that I mean in the WordPress community, is getting people to understand why WordPress, why open source versus, let alone going into these rural communities who has mobile devices and may not even have computers, laptops, and saying, you should care. You should care about open source. I don't have the answer yet. Have you? Has that come up at all with either of you, like in any of the teaching? I mean, it has to have come up with just like, why would I use WordPress? Does anyone have anything there?
Yeah, that comes a lot when you say WordPress, people understand it better than when you say open source. The moment you use open source, it sounds like IT jargon, and they start saying, oh, what's that? I don't think I'm that smart to use that. So I think the lingo here is very important, and more specifically, raising awareness, communicating more to let them know, oh, this is just a bigger picture of WordPress. This is just to let you know that WordPress is open source technology. This means that there is accessibility. Everybody can go there, contribute, do modifications, and use it as you wish. So there is no, sky is the limit, basically. There's no limitation to it. But it falls a little bit back to what we said about lack of technical skills and lack of confidence, and sometimes resistance to adopt the technology, just assuming, yeah, this is not something I can do. So yeah, that comes up a lot when you start talking to non-tech people.
Totally.
For me, it's an aspect of who owns your data.
Yeah.
So like on your brothers, that's one thing that many people don't understand, is that when you post on social media, it's not yours, it's theirs, and they get to use it for whatever they want to use it for. Or they could come in and delete your brother's entire social account, and all that hard work now disappears. Whereas with WordPress, it's yours. You know, as long as you pay your hosting, or if you have a free hosting account, you know, it's yours. And the power in owning your data is that you get to actually control it. You can control who's going to look at it. You can lock it down. You can have a subscription. But I think that's so important, and I think it's important to keep reiterating that, especially, like, my kids don't understand that, you know, when they post on Instagram, that they don't own that data, that they can be used for whatever. But I think it's important to continue to educate everybody in regards to, if you're going to put the work into it, make sure nobody can take it away from you.
Yeah, totally. And that has been my conversation is do you want someone to come in and not even take it down, but steal? You know, and that's big with social and influencers. And essentially, my brother has become a native language influencer. And so I this isn't the answer, but my biggest thing lately, and this comes up a lot in our WordPress news outlets, is this big challenge that's hitting all of us, is why WordPress? And I really think it's like, I think the platform I'm going to start with is getting people to understand this why of, like, let's own, especially in this world now where data is huge. Like, Facebook's free, it's not free. We're like giving this part of ourselves away for free, and they're making money off of us. I'm going to get all soapboxy right now, but that's, I think, my push right now so far is, like, with my brother and I've got cousins, and some of my fam still lives, or like does a lot of work with the reservations, is with data, with AI, with all this new future, is like more than ever we want to own our own content. So we're done. That's the answer. I'm just kidding. But no, but thanks for sharing, because that for me, it's been, I think, even more challenging, is to get this sort of care behind why WordPress, when I don't even have and by me, and I'm speaking on behalf of, like, my extended family or my community, is this desire when I'm just more like, what's available on my phone? You know, what is, and we haven't even talked about mobile aspect of WordPress. I don't think we're going to talk about that today. So anyway, thanks for sharing, but we're going to move on. All of this once brings up in my mind cultural preservation. So that's big, you know, from my point of view. Culturally, my parents were boomers, and there's a lot of we don't care. You know, there was a lot of that, and I'm sorry, that maybe it sounds awful for me to say that. No offense, but like that was my experience with my boomer parents. My dad is Mexican, my mom's Indigenous, and my dad wanted to assimilate and become American, so he didn't teach me Spanish. And then my mom lived a rough life, as anybody could imagine, growing up Indigenous and all the problems and cultural challenges that come with that life. And she was the poster child for that. And so they wanted us to be protected, but essentially just didn't give us our cultural preservation. So with that in mind, what experiences do you have? Like, how can WordPress, and specific to WordPress, because that's why we're here, help and be used to preserve and promote Indigenous languages, even though we're basically talking about that? But you guys have any other experience with like traditions, with our cultures, and any examples, or even ideas that you might have?
Sure. Yeah. So when it comes to WordPress, how WordPress can help Indigenous people about preserving traditions, cultures, and languages, I think just from the fact that they can create their own website, own their data,
Yeah.
and choose which tool to use, this is a good starting point for that. So they can make documentations available. They can create their own website. They can have learning systems where they can add more of their language, maybe phrases that are not commonly used every day, so they can pass that to future generations of Indigenous. They can also create like local groups, communities of WordPress to highlight any sort of educational tools they have. This could be a tool they could also use to boost over, let's say, social media, but still the data is theirs. Instead of creating, let's say, a social media web page or a social media page, I would say, and upload everything there, then the social media platform decides one day that this is a violation of their TNC and take it down. When they have it on WordPress, it's theirs. They change it when they want, they give it access to the audience they want, and they can highlight culture, languages, traditions. So I think it's a good place to get started with that.
That was so succinct. It was like perfect. We're gonna record that, take that clip, and just share it everywhere.
Sure.
Now follow. I'm just kidding. Okay. Yeah, no. But I mean, we're basically reiterating what we're talking about here. So, but no, I love it. Excuse me. Honestly, for me too, there's two worlds. There's WordPress, and this again, POV, and there's my background, my cultural background. And there's a lot of times I'm like over here fighting the WordPress fight, and I'm forgetting about my culture, my family, and I happen to be related to a lot of prominent Indigenous people, and I'm very grateful for that. In fact, a lot of my desire as a woman to be in leadership comes from my auntie, and she's been a huge prominent Indigenous person in my community, and she, to me, is like the beginning of what began a change, especially for people who grew up on reservations and were boxed in, is in a figurative way to explain what it was like. And she broke through the barrier, right? But as you start to desire to do better for yourself, it's like you forget along the way my own like family and like culture, and I get all like, oh, I'm in WordPress, and I'm kind of cool. So and for me, honestly, a lot of these questions is also helping me to get back to that of like empowering, and even my own brother, like I don't feel like I do enough to be like, let's use WordPress. Not that this is the fight for WordPress, it kind of is, but still. But so thank you honestly for sharing. It is a help for me as well. Okay, so let's move on to like education and skills. So what strategies have you found effective in teaching WordPress skills to members of your community? Like specifically, what works? You know what I mean? Where have you seen success? Like we can all talk about good ideas, but what have you seen that actually works?
So I started my technical career writing tutorials. I fell in love with the software. I learned everything about it, and I had this tutorial site. And the one thing that I realized and what I have carried forward is my knowledge is not everybody else's knowledge. And that in order to teach somebody how to use it, you have to forget what you know and act like somebody who doesn't know the technology, and how would you explain it? I always use this as an example. If you've been using computers for a very long time, you're going to say, open a new file. But that's not how you explain it. You explain in the upper left-hand corner, there's going to be the word file. Click on the word file, and then click on the word open, and this is going to open a file, or create a new file. And the reason why you need to do that is because you have to be on every level. And people who have the knowledge, they're going to skip all those words. They're going to just go to open file or create new file. Whereas you have created a tutorial on all levels so that nobody's sitting there asking, how do I create a new file? Because there's always that assumption when you have that knowledge. So for me, it's making sure that I'm always getting down to the lowest common denominator as far as educating the person and remembering they don't have the knowledge. Remembering that there is extreme patience that has to be made because you do know more knowledge than them. And it's, for me, myself, understanding that everybody can learn and you have to figure out what's best for them to learn. I'm a very visual person. I bought my first computer, I'm dating myself, 1994. The learning disability that my daughter has, I also have. And up until 1994, it was right after I graduated high school, I felt very stupid in life because I didn't understand things. So I sat down at this computer for the very first time in my entire life, and I fell madly in love with it because though I don't understand humans, I understood that computer. I understood when it didn't do something that I expected it to do. And I excelled at this aspect of knowing something that nobody else knew, and I fed into that. And so going on my past experience of thinking that I'm dumb because I didn't get algebra, and going into being able to teach myself what I have, getting to that level and remembering that everybody can do that. You just have to find, are they a visual person? Are they a written person? Do you need different kind of examples? So that's been my biggest thing as far as teaching people about WordPress.
When it comes to the strategies that worked for me, I first started with what personally works for me. Mm-hmm. What personally works for me is learning by doing. And also learning from something that's aligned with my interest. So basically, when I try to teach somebody about WordPress for the first time, I ask them, why do you want to build a website? What do you want to highlight? If they tell me, I'd like to create an e-store, an online store, then I will start teaching them WordPress plus WooCommerce. If they say, I love blogging, then I will start we're going to speed up with a WordPress.com website, and you can get started right away with writing your blog posts, and you can ship them to all your social media pages. So I find that creating workshops, hands-on workshop, really works with communities most of the time. And another thing is make sure that the project you are getting started with, the first one, aligns really with their interests. That works also a lot.
No, that's so true. Meeting people where they're at, right? And also teach with empathy. I love that. It's like, and you think about that if anybody, even your own kids, it's like, how do you get them to be interested? What are they already interested in? And kind of manipulate a little bit. Oh man, I'm naughty sometimes the way It's all good though. It's all like for good reasons. Thanks for sharing. Let's talk about like how going forward. A little bit of future vision here. So, if we had like a vision for the future, what could that look like for Indigenous communities in the digital space? And obviously, we're very pro WordPress, and we want to talk about future vision and what we can do in light of WordPress, and specifically for Indigenous communities. Have you guys thought about that at all, or do you know of any initiatives? Or yeah, we're just gonna go with it. Nice.
Yeah, when it comes to Indigenous communities, I think one first thing we could do as a community in the WordPress community would be community engagement. First of all, we need to be engaged with Indigenous communities, and we need to do needs assessment. Like, we can try to understand what they really need. Are they in remote areas? Do they need volunteers to go introduce them to WordPress? Do they have reliable internet connection? Do they have the logistic? Do they need computers? Is there any language barrier? Could they communicate straight in English with us, or do we need to find an Indigenous person who's fluent in the language we plan to use and to translate that into their language? And also, we need to find out what are the available options for us. Are they funds, public funds? Are they grants? Are there organizations that are ready to sponsor any sort of education? Are there, say, community Wi-Fi hotspot where we can gather to do any sort of training? So once we have this kind of stuff sorted out, we can now move into a situation where we can organize, where we can have local communities, local groups, and maybe monthly meetups, maybe, I don't know, bi-weekly meetups. Yeah. And yeah, I think we can go from there.
Love those ideas.
And I guess the biggest thing is that I think the most important thing that we can do is just start with one. We always try to figure out how we can help huge amounts, and that kind of ends up feeling overwhelming. And so for me, it's basically, how can I help one person today, and how can I help one person tomorrow? It's like, I'm not for sure what the book is, but like increasing your life by 1% on a daily basis. Eventually, you get to a very big number. I know that with what I can do, I can't change the world, but I can change one person's life if I devote myself to it. And I think that's the biggest thing, is just making sure that your priorities in life, that there's a little place in that you can help the communities, just even one person at a time, because that's one more person that didn't have the knowledge of WordPress in the past.
I love both of those so much, because even as you were talking right now, and I feel like this is like a talk for me right now, but because it does come to that. Like, I often think about my tribal land, which is right outside of Reno, and it's not well, as I'm sure anybody can imagine. And I think about one of my whys, why I'm here in life, is for human connection. And I believe that if we connect with people everywhere, it will make this world better. And I'm a little naive, but I believe it. I really do. And so it's very common that my brain thinks, I want to go back to my tribal land and I want to make such a difference. And everything you're saying is like, yes, but then it's so overwhelming, and then you're like, start with one, and I'm like, exactly. And for me, I've got brothers and sisters, and I have lots of cousins. And for me, it's like the challenge I'm feeling right now is, if I could just get them to get on board, then that's like the one step, right? And then now we've got a bunch of us who are maybe doing the same thing. And almost all my cousins were all registered the same tribe. And so that's all right off the bat encouraging me. So I appreciate that. And honestly, I feel like that's like a really good note to end on. And it looks like we already got a question going. So, and we're just about wrapping up, so. Mm. And I'm curious, were majority Indigenous who visited? Do you know? Okay. Mm. No, that's awesome. Thanks for sharing. Well, on that note, if anyone has any questions or comments, yes. I was going to say that.
I'll just tell you about me. I came from a very poor background, very, very poor. And again, like I said, I did not do well in school. I did not attend college. And when I got my first computer in '94, everything opened up. And then when I installed WordPress, I fell in love with WordPress, like hard. And I had templates, and I used plugins, and I kept teaching myself year over year over year. And it got to a point where I started attending WordCamps and fell in love with all of you people, because you people are incredible and inclusive. I could ask the stupidest question. They'd be like, oh no, let me help you with that. And they would be like all over it. Like, I never felt like I was really asking a stupid question. And I just kept focusing on WordPress over and over and over again. And now I work for WordPress. I work for the company that runs WordPress. And it's an aspect of, you have to have that passion. You have to have people who believe in you. And that's why these WordCamps are so important. I cannot stress the importance of WordCamps, is because in the world of the internet, it's actually kind of a really hostile world. I don't know if y'all have figured that. It's hostile. But when you start getting into the WordPress community, you start seeing that people actually care. And it's not, what about me? It's, what can I do for you? And yeah, so I mean, starting from nothing, and now I work with people on a daily basis who are developing WordPress and wanting to use WordPress. And yeah, so like I said, I give back as much as has been given to me. Yeah.
And you started with .com, right?
Yeah.
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 So you went from .com to .org to Automatician.
Well, no, I jetpack to .com.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, so.
You have any? Or no?
I don't really have a story, but I can say, yeah, coming back to his question, getting started with .com is a very good thing, because you don't have to worry with the server side of things. You have just all in one. But once you start building there, you will see what else you need. Then that's how you will start deciding, I want to self-host, I need more customization, I need to develop my own template, my own plugin. So yeah, it's a good starting point, basically.
Yeah. It looks like we're wrapping up, but I love that question. As somebody who started with .org and didn't even know what .com was, it's just such a new perspective, and I appreciate that, because it just shows how our community is changing and expanding. So thanks for sharing. But it looks like we're done.
Thank you very much for such an informative and really, really positive panel. It's so nice to see that, no, the internet is not evil. And I'm so glad that everyone here is part of the WordCamp and WordPress community. So thank you very much.